Hello, my name is Dr. Kelly Shear, and I interview and coach executives for a living. Today, I'm going to talk about, from the candidate's perspective, how to interview for leadership positions. I'll talk about how to prepare for an executive assessment, what you might expect, and winning responses that always impress me as an executive assessor. First, let's talk about how to prepare. For reference, I've made 2 separate videos on how to prepare for pre-hire personality tests and pre-hire aptitude tests. You can find the links for these videos in the description of this video. In terms of preparing for the interview, consider the role, what you will be asked to do in the role, and prepare related examples of what you have done in the past. For example, if you are applying for a role where you are expected to double the business in 2 years, prepare an example of a time when you grew a business in the past. The more related the example, the better, but it's not necessary. As an assessor, I'm looking for foundational skills that will support you in doubling the business, like urgency, growth mindset, holding people accountable for improved performance metrics, etc. I would also sit down and write out examples in the STAR method, where you prepare a response that lays out the following: specific situation, task, action, and result of the situation you are describing. Thinking of several key examples or achievements in your career and writing out responses will jog your memory, and, more often than not, you'll find you'll draw on the examples in some way during your interview. You also want to practice writing out the more negative aspects of your career: failures, setbacks, challenges, critical feedback you've received, mistakes you've made. You will be asked about these too, so do not avoid responses. Be vulnerable and thoughtful about these responses. For example, share what you've learned from your failures. It is always impressive when someone is vulnerable about failures and was resilient and smart enough to pick themselves up and apply those learnings to be successful in the future. This brings up another point. You will be asked to share what you believe to be your strengths and your weaknesses or development opportunities. Be thoughtful here. Do not give cop-out answers. An example of a cop-out answer is, "I'm a perfectionist," or "No one has ever given me critical feedback, so I can't think of anything I need to improve." These are red flag answers. It signals to me that you are either not vulnerable or trying to hide, or you're not self-aware or not willing to consider you have opportunities to change or improve yourself. You may also be asked to put yourself in others' shoes. For example, I like to ask, if I talk to your colleagues, what would they say they appreciate about working with you, and what would they say can be challenging about working with you? Again, don't say, "They never said anything, so there is nothing they would say that is challenging about working with me." If you're really not sure, ask your colleagues. Ask people who are not necessarily your friends. Who can you rely on to be a truth teller? I'm not necessarily looking for some horrific response, but basically an acknowledgement that you recognize you're not perfect, you have opportunities to grow and evolve, and you recognize that there is some aspect of your style you need to adapt to different stakeholders. Finally, have a response for the question, what are your career goals? Or what is your vision for your career moving forward? If you're applying for a role, hiring stakeholders typically want to know that you are thoughtful about your own career, are thinking about the future, and acknowledge what you may and may not be a good fit for. They typically don't want to hire blockers or people who aren't interested in advancing, either upward or laterally, themselves. To recap, write out your responses in the STAR method to jog your memory and set yourself up for success for the interview. Thoughtfully consider your strengths as well as your weaknesses. Be vulnerable. Have a response ready for the question, what is your future vision for your career? That brings us to the end of this video. Thank you for watching and see you next Thursday.